Writing music. You know, somebody said to me once, what's it feel like to sit and listen to one of your own pieces being played? What is it like sitting in a band and playing it? What's it like rehearsing it under some other conductor? What's it like rehearsing it yourself? It's a very difficult question to answer because, quite frankly, you feel a mixture of satisfaction, not smoke satisfaction, but a feeling of some kind of achievement. And yet mingled with that, there's a feeling of inadequacy, that it could have been a lot better, but it's too late now because it's in black and white and in print and you can't print it all over again. And another sense, too, in which you feel a little embarrassed to think that a group of 30 players have taken the trouble to rehearse something that's come out of more grey matter. It's quite an honour. To say nothing of the fact that people will be willing to sit and listen to this stuff. When I work it out on paper and I look at it and say, well, I suppose it'll work, let's wait and see what it sounds like. And then to think that people are kind enough to say, well, they get something out of it. Perhaps they're being over-polite. Perhaps they don't. Perhaps they're really like some people with whom I billeted once and who didn't know that I did an awful lot of writing. And they said, oh, we went to the commissioning recently in London and the staff band played something. It was dreadful. And they said they can't remember the title. The title wasn't announced. The staff band played it in a kind of an interlude while the cadets were getting ready for a presentation, a pageant. And I said, what tunes did it have in it? Can't remember. And they said, but it was all funny old harmony. It sounded as if the band were playing what they liked. And I couldn't think of any composer who'd got to that dizzy dimensions of just writing on the paper, play what you like, fellas. And then suddenly the lady said, oh, darling, it had the tune I'll Follow Thee of Life the Giver in it. Oh, hello, here it comes. I've got a selection with I'll Follow Thee of Life the Giver in it. And I didn't tell them this. I let them still sort of feel around and try to change the subject. And it didn't, and they were still rooting after this title. What was it? What was it? And eventually, it had to come out, to cut a long story short. And there were a few red faces around the table, and the host suddenly said, well, it's not a bad piece, really. I suppose it's because we don't understand what it's all about. But they said some very unkind things about it, really. And I said, look, please don't worry. Every man and every woman has a perfect right to his own, her own opinion. And some music we like and some music we don't. The people I quarrel with are the ones who never bother to try to like certain types of music, or they listen to somebody speaking in French or German and say, it's rubbish, because I can't understand. When, of course, the German or the Frenchman will understand the profoundness of what may be said in their particular language, because they understand it. Now, the Salvation Army's musical machine is a most unique one, in this sense that within the short space of 100 years, we have managed to be a worldwide movement, and that's a pretty small comparison, really, to the whole length of time that the Church of God has existed, and its music. But within that fairly short space of time, we have somehow managed to cover a fairly wide panorama of different types of music. Vocal music, the gospel song, the devotional song, anthem type of music for voices, and in later years, gone into the rock world slightly, and the pop song, and in the brass world, of course, we have branched out in all kinds of directions. And there's a sense in which a lot of us, even as Salvationists, are not fully aware of what does actually exist. That's a shame. Well, there it is. We at the music camp are having a great time, and we're digging into some of the music that is here in Salvation Army repertoire, and trying to learn something about it. But coming back to this question of writing it, have you ever made a cake? It's very similar, really. Well, there is a difference between a piece of music and a piece of cake, I must admit. But in the sense that sometimes you make the cake and you taste it afterwards, it goes bad and soggy in the middle because you haven't put enough of this or that into it. Or you've overloaded it with too much of this, And consequently, the taste isn't balanced, and you taste more of one thing than another, and you say it's a bad cake. Now, some pieces of music, you see, are just like this, where you've got to get the right sort of ingredient and balance in it. If, for instance, you have a piece of music that's 10 minutes long, there's got to be a sort of a balance about the thing all the way through, so that it isn't kind of jerky and unnecessarily detached, and there must be a relationship, both in the thought about which it is being written and in the theme itself, on the musical side of things. There must also be a character. We were talking about this in the composition class. I mean, somebody was saying about this particular piece, the present age, about which we shall talk in a moment, we don't like that dreadful march in the middle. Bom, bom, it sounds all full of discord. And I have to say, well, now, it's like this. That really is meant to describe the horrors of this world. Your places like Belfast, the places where all noble thoughts are trodden down by this ism or that ism. The problems between races, the difficulties where kids are brought up to learn to hate the country next door simply because they were born in this country. So you say, now, how can I describe that state of affairs against which the Christian has to portray his message? You say, I'll do this. La, 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 ba, 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 la, la. And of course it doesn't work, because that's Mendelssohn's spring song, and that describes a spring day, but we're not describing a spring day at that particular part of it. It's an ugly, terrible, guttural, hateful scene. And consequently, the music tells it in that way. And all kinds of devices that we use to make the point there. Similarly, there's a part in here, which we shall play to you in a moment, which depicts the flippancy of this world. You know, the background against which we still have to preach our gospel with people who couldn't care tuppence about what they're saying. And you as Christians and I have to say God is love against that background. And that's not an easy thing these days. And so the music is flippant. A soppy tune, really. It's daft. And, daft. And it really doesn't mean anything. And yet it is typical of the background against which we sometimes have to portray the gospel message. Purposelessness. And wow, we do have to do this. It might help if we start at the beginning of this piece and to think in terms of a young man, shall we say, of 17, 18, 19 years old. He's just found the Lord. He's just been converted. And like all new converts, he's going to turn this world upside down. He comes out of his shell and he's so convinced about his message that he's going to tell the whole world what it's all about. And he's so sure that everybody's going to listen to what he's got to say because he's got the finest message in the world. They're sure to stop and listen. And so he gives it out. You know what sometimes happens? We give it out in a spirit of arrogance, mixed up with confidence, mixed up with brashness, forthrightness. You've got to listen to me, folks, sort of thing, you know. Okay, let's see if we can capture that in the first few bars. This little tune, which, if you like, is the theme of our young friend who has just been converted and wants to tell the world what he has found. Here we go. Full of arrogance, full of pride, full of confidence, and trying to arrest people's attention. But the world suddenly says, so what? And boy, there's nothing worse than being a Christian, is there, kids, when you try to witness for the Lord and people don't give you direct opposition. They say, what a lot of try. And so they take his rather noble tune, letter B, folks, and listen to what they do with it. A letter B. They laugh at it and scorn it and dance round it and make fun of it. Let's see if we can play that same tune rhythmically at letter B, please. That tune, yum, ba, 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 but it's lost its arrogance. At the beginning it was bom, 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 all posh and pompous, you know. Do you use those words in America? Don't you? But it's the same tune, but it's lost its integrity because it's being laughed at, you see. Now, any Christian, especially a young one, who gets to that point, young people, where you suddenly say, well, I'm not spending the rest of my life preaching the gospel and being laughed at. You get to a point, and I expect all of you have got to that point at some time or another. I think I saw a signpost down here where it said, Wits End. And we've all been there at some time, where we shrug our shoulders and say, well, what do we do? Do we carry on? Do we pack up? Or what do we do? We certainly stop, and there are some question marks. So let's just do that. Where we stop, please, people. A change of key there with the basses coming on those three, quarter notes. I wish we spoke the same language. Quarter notes, and then the dotted half note, please, on the fours and the trombones. Here, these are thinking chords, if you know what I mean. He's being brought to a stop. He's scratching his head. Messy, but there, he's gone to a messy state in his life, you see, where he just doesn't know which way to turn. I'd like you to listen, too, to all that mess that was going on, this uncertainty as to which way you're going to take, brother. Let us see, please, trombones. Listen to this tune, will you? Trombones. I'll count 3 so you can feel what the pace is, right? That's bass trombone as well. 3, 1, 2, 3. Recognize it? It's there again, you see, and it's trying to rear its noble head above all the confusion that's going on elsewhere. Not very successfully, because there's so much going on. But they're trying, you see, to keep that tune alive. You notice that the notes are longer. Bom, bom, dom, bom, 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 bom. Sometimes composers do that. They make a tune, and those of you who are musical students will know what I mean. They make this tune longer, and it's a device called augmentation, you know. Bach does it quite a lot if you've studied Bach in his strettos at the end of his fugues, where a tune comes out in big, broad notes, twice the value of each note, and that's called augmentation. All right, now let's, we'll skip for a moment and come back to that a little later on. We've got to the point where he really doesn't know what to do. I speak now to the students, of course, but I'm also speaking to our adult guests here. Every one of us who have accepted the name of Jesus has to testify that at some time or another we've had to weigh up ourselves again. And we have had to decide whether or not we're going to serve the present age in which we live. For some of us here, our present age is extended back to 10, 20, 30, 40, even 50 years. For us here at the music school, 1976 is our present age. We sometimes sing to the tune of Southport, to serve the present age, my calling to fulfill. Oh, may all my powers engage to do my master's will. The melody is in the major key. The harmony is in the minor key. To give that atmosphere of doubt and thoughtfulness. Let's try it, shall we? 2 bars before D, please, basses. what it's doing, does it? You see, it rests on a chord that needs progression. We've all got to that point as well, where they say, well, what are we going to do? And then we have to recognize the background against which we're going to grow up. We young people, sorry, you young people, that things, against which you've got to grow up. Here's this flippant tune, and the boy or the girl at college, at high school, at any kind of background where there is laughter and ridicule at the Christian faith. Take heart in this, will you? All the way through the ages, people have tended to jibe at things which are honourable and noble. People still have a sly laugh at folks who are honest. People still have a sly laugh at people who play the game in relationships between the sexes. People still have a sly dig at those who, you know, want to play the game properly and to be good characters and men and women. We've always had it, we always will. And this is something of that background of flippancy. Let's have it, shall we? Letter E. It's a silly tune, and in the music it's got scherzoso, which is Italian for joke, not taken seriously. The tune is a circular one, in the sense that it doesn't come to an end. It's going on. You ever seen a dog chasing its tail? Okay, letter E. Here it is, the flippancy in the background of the world. Right. That's the bit my host didn't like. You see, it's marked on the music in that particular section, burlescamente. And there are four main things going on there, and all of them fall into each other. And so it's a right mix-up. Let's just analyse them very briefly. First of all, there's the cornet tune, which we won't ask them to play again. And then there's this background here of fairground music, if you like. Let's have these people, please. The solo horn, first horn, second horn, first baritone, second baritone, and lower E flat bass percussion. Those people, please. And B flat bass, I'm sorry. Is that a G? G, okay. Play it unmusically, but you've never been told that before, all right? In the middle of that, somebody is trying to sing the present to serve the present age. So faintly, but they're trying nobly to stick their message right to the forefront of it all. So can I have both euphoniums, please? Upper and lower, and now the upper E flat bass part. And listen to this. But it's done in such a drunken way. This is what we think of your tune. Okay, here we go. Terrible, isn't it? See? But somewhere in the background you've got that first subject, which is still a part of the theme here. And listen to this, will you? From the soprano, first and second cornet, flute. First tone, second tone, bass tone. You people, right? Here we go. See if you can recognize this. Now. Squeaky wheel, yes, I went. Yeah, that's it, that's right, of course. But can you recognize that tune which we had at the beginning? Yum, bum, 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 bum. And all that lot mixed up together produces this messy background against which we've got to hold our Salvation Army flag and say, we believe that God loves you. That's tough. Okay, let's go. Letter G, please. Enjoy it. You know, shot last year at his garden gate in Belfast. That's one of the most tragic things that's happened to our family. A distant cousin, but he was standing by his gate, and some lunatic of a kid comes by with a machine gun and a car, and he just shoots him. No political leanings, one way or the other. And it seems it's a sad and awful waste of life to think that there are hooligans and people who will do this kind of thing. And there are no causes that justify that kind of murder. The thing is that the Salvation Army still holds its open airs in Belfast, and I've stood with them more than once and stood in a street that has been patrolled with soldiers trying to tell them of the love of God. And I couldn't help thinking how near to that situation is this particular music that we're going to play to you now, where we have to visit all kinds of folks who disbelieve the Christian faith and tell them that despite the hatred and the wars and the things that are going on around, God still is the answer. They shrug their shoulders and say, you tell me that God is a God of love and he allows this and this and this. And to some people like that, it's so hopeless to try and explain to them that it is man's folly that brings us to a state that we're in. Anyway, my job as the composer is to try to portray the horror of all this. And this is what we've done here. This is a march, marked on the music, Marcia Grotesco. And I leave you to judge whether it brings you that feeling of horror and revulsion. H, please. Comes from a distance and disappears instantly. And it frightens a little, and it's meant to. You hear the cornets doing some, I think it's just here, is it? No, it's later on. I'm anticipating. But later on, the cornets repeat what is happening there. And youngsters who are cornet players in particular, have you ever tried flutter-tonguing, flotte-zong, where somehow you get, I've been speaking too long, I can't get it right. But you get that terrible, grotesque sound, which you'll hear in just a moment when we come to that repetition. Now, can we move on, please, to letter J? I suppose we've all sung in prayer meetings, we who are young, we who are older, I'll follow thee, life the giver. I'll follow thee, suffering Redeemer. And you and I, whatever age we are, have often been guilty of singing things without very, very much thought, you know. And the number of times we have happily said, I'll follow thee, deny thee never, by thy grace I'll follow thee. Peter said the same thing, of course, and I suppose Judas did as well. And all the disciples said that they would go and die with Christ, but they weren't to be seen when the time came. And we've all let him down. Well, now, somehow, in the context of this piece, where this young man begins to realize that despite all this, he is going to promise to follow. But let's see what happens. You think of the words as we play this chorus too. There's just a little bit of material before we actually get to the chorus that is so well known, I'll follow thee. honest with himself. Some of you wanted to go on and sing never, but he doesn't, can't, because he realizes what a big thing he's saying. So the music stops there, and there's a big silence. But suddenly he plucks up courage again and says, right, I will do it. But something else happens this time. The horror march comes right back in and actually laughs at him. You hear the trombones in a very macabre laugh. Do it well, do it badly, I mean, you know, well. Do badly well. A real snigger with newts in, and, you know, let's see if we can get that now. Okay, we picked that up then, fellas, from where? 2 before K will do it, wouldn't it? Yes. 2 before K, the last 3 8th notes of that bar. Ooh, I'm going to say all this when I get back to England. They won't know what 8th notes and 16th are. You're going to look at me. You ready? 1, 2, and 3. That's happened to us before, hasn't it? Where with all our good intentions, kids, somebody always kicks us down a bit. We find it a job to get up. But look, keep getting up. Every time it happens to you, whether it's a snigger of the indifference of the world, or whether it's the background of hatred, whatever it is, keep on believing in Christ, because there isn't another way. There is not another way. And of course he comes to that point where he realizes that before he can really present the message of God, he's got to know the peace of God in his own heart. Now, getting a little bit technical here, we haven't talked much about the technical side of things because we really wanted to get the message of this music over. But sometimes, you know, put it this way, at school, do you ever sing rounds? Do you call them rounds over here? Catches and, you know, 3 blind mice, where one person starts, the next voice comes in, the next voice comes in. Really, that is a very simple form of the classical device called canon. A canon is a tune that starts off and then comes in again with another voice 1 bar later. You have a look when you get back to your core. You may be able to do it before you get back to number 41 in the tune book. Tallis. It goes la 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 la, and the first baritone, second baritone, and the euphonium part play the tune 4 beats later than the cornet. Tallis was an organist at Waltham Abbey in north of London for many years. And he was a clever musician, and this tune is so cleverly constructed, you can have about 8 voices coming in after itself. You can do it backwards, sideways, inside out. It's such a clever texture of notes. And here there is a canon, but it's a canon at the 4th, which simply means this. The tune starts off on 1 note, and then the tune is repeated again on another note lower down. When we do this, I forgot to say, think of the words, "Be still and know that I am God," from Psalm 46, which is that levelling influence which is supposed to happen at this point. Here we go. youngsters, that tune chasing the one, but at 4 notes low. And that's something that, if you take up composition, to try to do that makes you quite disciplined in your mind. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I suppose that the young people haven't sung this song very much. When peace like a river attendeth my way. Do you sing it much over here? When sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot thou hast taught me to know, it is well with my soul. Written under tragic conditions by a man who was travelling to England, but whose wife and family went on a boat previous, and he had to travel later on. His family was lost at sea, and had he travelled on that same boat, he would have been as well. But in the middle of all his tragedy, he wrote this song. When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to know it is well with my soul. And our young Christian is comforting himself at this point with that thought. One more thing I want to do before we finish this. I hope you're not bored sick, but let's a peep. This finishes the whole piece with a rather challenging type of music, which seems to say to the young person, now come on, get your sleeves rolled up and really go out and do the job properly. But listen to this tune, will you? Let's a peep. There's a sense of purpose and drive as he goes towards the end of that. It is a musical exercise, it's true. But for the young people who have patiently listened to us this week in our practices and listened this evening, bear in mind that all composers write because they've got something to say, even if that something is not necessarily on religious lines. They express themselves in sound. This particular piece, like many others in Salvation Army repertoire, says a message, talks about it. And it could be that this is the very state that you are in, recognizing the problems of being a Christian in 1976. And it could be that you say, well, I'll tread water for the rest of my days and not bother. I hope that this will be a musical experience for you, but more than that, it'll make you resolve to follow Christ even more than you have done in the past.